Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and I've made it all this way with Michael Kester. It's me
here
and
we
you
are.
and Bad Cat.
Yeah, some Bad Cat.
So when people get this show, I think they're still going to be surprised because I still don't think
That they expected us to make it all the way to the end of the year.
We'd do this episode in particular, I think.
No, that's probably
when
more
the title
serious.
finally downloads in iTunes or when they go on the website or whatever,
I don't
they're
think
going to look at this and say, really? This is really happening?
You know, I don't think the title is what's going to phase them.
No, probably not.
That's the magic of the decision we made, is to intentionally choose a title that sounded like it was a really fun, joyous, sunny...
Happiness and Kids.
It's Happiness and Kids. It's our final homage to Lazy Sunday films.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's it. What it is, I mean, this all operates under a terrible false pretense, a presumption you and I are making that any human being is hearing this recording.
Right.
Normally, we might joke that no one listens to our show when in reality, 3 to 5 people listen to our show.
Sure.
However, this time, I mean... if anybody decided they were going to watch Happiness and Kids for the show, they're so mad at us at this point.
Yeah.
It's just not happening.
It's some irritating shit.
So this is, if you've never heard Double Feature before, welcome one new fan. If this is, in fact, your first show, this is the kind of show where, we have an NC-17 double feature by complete accident today.
Yeah, that is what happened.
NC-17 to unrated double feature was not the intention. That's just the sort of thing you happen to find on double feature.
And on top of that, the other thing you're going to find on double feature is that somehow we will manage to spoil 2 NC-17 rated films.
Yeah, we will.
If that bothers you, you can skip that using our fantastic chapters menu.
People love the chapters feature. They love it. All right, so happy 4 years, and next time we'll have a wrap up. And we always like to spend the last couple weeks of the year celebrating the fact we made it to the end of the year, even though we're never quite there until the next one starts. So enough of that. We'll save that for the year ender. Let's start with Happiness. Happiness was a film that abandoned its NC-17 rating. And it's a new show favorite, I guess, as far as the director goes.
Yeah.
Look at this guy just showing up twice towards the end of the year.
Yeah, we did Todd Solondz earlier. We paired him with Russ Meyer when we did Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Sure, that wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, and we kind of, both of these films, he snuck his way onto the show.
Yeah.
A lot of times we choose directors for reasons, we like them, they're interesting, they're Gus Van Sant. These are all different reasons that a director may end up on double feature. But Todd Solondz kind of lucked out. We liked the cut of his jib to pair up against Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Sure.
And we had actually a while back, both of us had independently watched Happiness, almost as a joke to each other.
Yeah, it really was.
I had watched it and I just said, you should watch this movie Happiness. It's really fun.
So I got it and I watched it, and that was
we
it.
were sad.
Yeah, yeah, we were. I called you back and I said, "What the fuck?" Which, by the way, that was during involuntary isolation in Normal, Illinois. So I was already kind of losing my mind a little bit, and you decided that it would be funny for you. Yeah, I see you're really enjoying yourself right now.
Well, I'm laughing because at the time it was a joke, but upon watching it for double feature, it turns out it's one of the best films ever fucking made.
Yeah, I know.
And it's
Isn't
hilarious.
That great how that happens.
It's so good.
The opening of this is my favorite Todd Solondz of all the Todd Solondz. The John Lovitz, first of all, John Lovitz. All right, so let's just state that. I'm not going to exhaustively go through his filmography here, but he did The Critic. And wasn't too long ago we were talking about Amazon Women on the Moon, or even before that, I guess, during Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, our feelings about, Roger Ebert and critics.
Right.
Or our feelings about not having feelings about critics, I guess. So The Critic was a show that, was kind of funny for that. But he just has this initial part, and it's fucking great. the movie starts in the post-breakup line, which is an incredible place to enter. You know, you don't go through the whole getting the characters pass or even the I don't want to see you anymore, whatever she said. You start in an awkward place. You've just walked awkwardly into a conversation.
Sure.
Which is, I mean, really, Todd Solondz right there.
Right.
And so he puts you in that position, and what are you going to do? You're going to awkwardly watch the fallout and proceed to watch the fallout for the remainder of the film. It just lets us in. It introduces us to what we've signed up for in the most sufferable moment, really.
Well, yeah, I mean, the film is called Happiness, and forgive me for being that asshole that points out the significance of the title.
No, it's fine. It's not just a trick for your friend or your podcast.
Right. You walk into the film at the moment where happiness has been depleted.
Yes.
If you take even the line before, you know, the actual initial breakup line that you were talking about that we never get to see, one of the two people is happy until that line is spoken.
Sure.
Once somebody says, I think we should break up, I think we should see other people, this isn't working out, any of the cliche lines, which are the only ones that ever get used.
Yeah, those are them. It's not you, it's
no
me.
one's happy. Neither party is in a good place at that point. And that's the rest of the film, is all these people who are generally unhappy. There are people who are arguably happy. Joy's two sisters, I guess, are arguably happy, the American dream and all the fame and fortune and whatever. But the film focuses on the people who have serious problems, who are unhappy. And it's just this, I guess it's just a portrait of them striving to find happiness, even though everyone's just fucked up.
Yeah, happiness is the motivator of the film.
Sure.
It is the end destination. It's also the excuse for the film. It's the reason we get to see these people and their, let's call them challenges.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to ultimately find that. You know, that's a scene where, I mean, I can only imagine she feels relief, if anything. A lot of times I'll also watch Happiness and think, well, in what moments are the characters getting at least a reprieve from what they've been going through? If not, you know, it's a question of, is that happiness for these people?
Sure.
Are they miserable enough that just the release of, oh, I can get out of this awkward thing I don't want to be in, is that enough for her?
Right.
Is that the best she's going to get, really? You know, the emotional manipulation of that scene is great, too. The fact that she asks him if he's feeling better, and we as an audience kind of feel consoled. Because we're there, and John Lovitz is easily identifiable as the funny person.
Mm-hmm.
So we're thinking, oh, when does the funny kick in after the awkward? And as she's consoling him and consoling the audience, it's really right at the moment we stop feeling, you know, the worst for him, which is really how we feel. We feel this is the worst thing that's ever happened in the scope of the film. We start to feel like we're getting better. And then he gives her the ashtray, and it almost brings up just enough guilt that I get excited by the fuck off ending.
Sure.
You know, then you kind of get the knife twisting. Oh, he got her a present too.
Right.
Oh, now I'm starting to feel bad a little bit again. Oh, this isn't for you. You should go to hell.
Well, and it's great that Joy enters our scope of the film as the bad guy.
Yeah.
And as the bastard.
Right.
And then the rest of the film, everybody talks about how, oh, Joy's life.
Oh, poor Joy.
So hard.
Trish talks to Joy in these barbs, though. She's not quite, I mean, everything she says has a little bit of a jab at the end. You know, it's, nothing is negative, but it all seems like sort of backhanded compliments.
Yeah.
If it was even a compliment, that's how well it's done. That's with how much nuance. You used to be hopeless, but there's a glimmer of hope.
Yeah, that's such a dark moment where she says, in honor of our sisterly transparency, I need to let you in on something. I've always thought you were going to be a failure, but maybe you won't be.
Yeah, hey, look at that positive spin. Responds to, you know, the comment about her music career saying, oh, my music career is going great. And, you know, Trish says, oh, yeah, it will be. Cynthia Stevenson, who plays Trish, just sells all of that stuff with her, just this kind of optimism she exudes.
Sure.
You know, on paper, it's probably just mean.
Yeah.
And she makes it, you know, you feel, she gives it the backhand. She kind of did a similar thing in Dead Like Me, in the TV show, and the awful Dead Like Me film. Please don't see that. Where she played this character of sort of a very real but unrelenting optimism. You know, especially in Dead Like Me, to contrast that to some of the other characters that were just cookie cutter optimistic characters. She was the one who could kind of bring a real sense of optimism to that. And she does the same for this film. Before we get too deep into the really messed up characters, I also want to talk about Billy a little bit.
The younger son.
Sure, yeah. He's got this obsession with age and maturity that I think is something we talked about a little bit on Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Sure.
I mean, that was a large part of that, is really acknowledging, I guess, would be the word, what kids go through, and I guess we'll see that in the next movie too.
Right.
What their real life looks a lot more like.
Because in film and in, TV and media these days, kids are always still painted as naive and unaware and not really, full, well-rounded individuals.
Oh man, I wouldn't even say these days. I mean, think back to the 50s.
Well, that's what I mean. When I mean these days, I mean since media. I'm sorry. These days is it doesn't really mean anything when I'm 24 years old. But Billy, he is a well-rounded character, or at least he's striving to be a well-rounded adult and work his way to being a, quote, grown-up.
Well, that's his obsession, right? Every time we see him, it's age and maturity, and do you think I'm old enough to be the head of the house? And obviously all these sexual hang-ups he already has at 11. And I think, he's being a kid like they are at that age, focused on wanting to be older, wanting to be an adult, having that. I don't know if that's universally true, but we get so distracted reminiscing in film when we have children in film. We celebrate adolescence. It's fun. It's careless. As adult film watchers, we like to go back to that time. I mean, I think culturally that's something we do. We forget that maybe not all youth, but some youth, there's an obsession with maturity.
Sure.
I was anyways. That's all I could think about, is growing up and getting out of, not being surrounded by people who were, I can't really remember back to when I was 11, but high school or college or whatever.
Yeah.
Going through high school, and I had to get out a year early. I couldn't be in high school any longer. And it was the same thing for me in college. I was in college and I couldn't wait to be done with college and be an adult and have my own place.
Right.
That's not it's not a cinematic obsession. You don't see that very often portrayed that way. And then Billy asks his dad about cum. So let's talk about cum.
Well, cum, that is really an underlying theme to the movie. Entirety of the film.
Cum is sort of a motif of Todd Solondz's film.
Now, the moment that this film really began to stand out for me when I saw it the first time, and I know we're talking about the same thing here. I know you felt the same way, but when Philip Seymour Hoffman blows his load on the wall,
yeah, sure,
that was it's not that big of a deal. It's really not that fucked up, but it's something you never see, something you never think about, and it's handled in such... I think that when he's sticking the postcard onto it, that's when you realize this is something he does. This wasn't a mistake.
Right.
He didn't accidentally come on his laptop.
Sure.
This is, every night he calls up some lady, jerks off, scooges on the wall, and then puts more of his collage.
Yeah, I think the fact that film doesn't treat it with a joke at all. I mean, this is such a good wrap-up show for the hypersexualized year 4 of Double Feature. But how many times have we talked about cum throughout the year? And it's always for jokes.
Sure.
It's even us putting together this fucking episode is for jokes.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could go back to Chillerama if you want to find some cum jokes.
Well, sure, that, and we referenced a dirty shame quite a bit throughout the year for often for that particular scene. But there's no joke here. There's kind of a joke in that he slaps a postcard on it. I mean, that's a little funny in that dry Todd Solondz way.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about that with Welcome to the Dollhouse. The jokes are never ha-ha funny. They're, okay, funny.
Somewhere halfway through, when Billy's starting to ask his dad about all of the sex stuff, there's that kind of feeling in that scene that everyone has left the theater.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has left the theater. I didn't get to see this in a theater. I kind of got to experience that with the Aristocrats. I remember talking about that on our show as people just evacuated.
Yeah.
Like there was a fucking fire. And just the conversation itself is awkward for those two characters to be having. The explanation feels pretty bad. You feel like this is a pretty fucking dark place.
Yeah.
But it's he starts asking him, well, have you come? Have you masturbated? You can be honest with me. He starts to ask these uncomfortable questions about, do you need me to show you or teach you? And it's all made worse after seeing him buy this preteen fucking magazine.
Yeah.
You know, it's the setup for that scene as well as the scene itself.
Well, you get this weird feeling, at least I do. This is more dealing with Bill than Billy. Played by what's the actor's name? Dylan Baker.
Yeah.
Who we saw back in Trick or Treat.
Awesome.
Also just doing weird stuff with kids.
Yeah, well, what are you going to
do? But I always have this underlying feeling that when it comes to Billy, Bill has those urges in check.
Sure.
Which is why it's so heartbreaking at the end.
Yeah.
When you realize that his urges are only in check so far as he won't fuck his own son.
Well, man, that scene where he's confessing to Billy.
Yeah.
That's one where we don't have any of the Todd music that we talked about. If you've ever wondered what a scene would feel like, a typical dark comedy Todd Solondz scene without his kind of signature fascination with music, this is seriously about the darkest place in the total sum scope of American film.
Yeah.
I mean, I challenge you to find. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
No, I think you're dead on.
I can't remember a spot where we've ever been to a darker
heavy
place
and
on the show.
So real, and just every time Billy asks a question, you hope Bill won't answer truthfully, and then every time Bill answers truthfully, you hope Billy won't ask another question.
It's true. And this is the same character who has, these scenes where he's in the oversaturated Disney outdoors.
Right.
Or the baseball game, which is, I mean, it's gross, but because of prior knowledge.
Sure.
It's a twist on that, that bright, sunny outdoor stuff. But other times he has a dark scene like this, or he has, really, I remember the scene where he has just this evil lighting. The
sandwich scene.
Aren't you going to eat the sandwich?
Yeah.
Fucking scary. Followed by, of course, a magic, mystical music cue telling you that everything is swell.
Sure. Well, he lives under the Portrait of an American Family roof. Mm-hmm. He's a husband. Oh, he's got a job. He's got a child. Everybody's happy. Everything's quaint. So if
it's as if the music is a shut-in and is not aware of the outside world.
And if we're going to look at him in the same light that I was mentioning with the title, in the pursuit of his personal happiness, further, not even necessarily Bill's, but as a pedophile. And I know that there's a stigma with the word pedophile, and here on Double Feature, let it be our moment here to try to reprise some of the stigma. So a pedophile is somebody who is sexually attracted to children.
Right.
That is pretty much the literal definition of pedophile. Now, I know we mentioned talking about this, but I want to ask you, and just to generally pose the question. We already covered incest on Double Feature. Do you remember, when did we do that?
There's been many an occasion where we covered incest, but I believe it was probably Amityville Horror. I think that was
it. You're right.
We like to ask really hard questions because we realize at this point we have really weeded out the people who are uncomfortable with these questions. In fact, it may just be deranged weirdos that are listening, which almost makes me uncomfortable. Now I've talked myself into being uncomfortable with the question. It goes back to that art idea. Go the uncomfortable places that other people don't want to go. All right, so ask me a fucked up question. Let's play the experiment.
Again, it's the same basic question as the incest question. As a pedophile, if your urges end before practice, if you buy a Teen Bop magazine and jerk off to a picture of the youngest Jonas brother, or you get off looking at a catalog.
You're asking if there's an ethical line there.
Well, yeah, I'm saying, where does it become an evil thing? If you think sexually of children, while that may be fucked up in the general mindset of people, it's only so fucked up because in their head you are victimizing a child, somebody who's innocent. But if you're not going out and raping children, I'm not saying this in a when we did Videodrome. I'm not saying this in a does this keep your urges in check by jerking off to a youth magazine.
Right.
But I mean, honestly,
isn't fantasy just fantasy?
Right. I don't care if somebody's going to fucking look at a goddamn fern and jerk off to it.
Right.
That doesn't make me any more uncomfortable than anything else.
Sure. No, I hear what you're saying. If we're going to try and examine this objectively, which is an impossible task, tactfully an even more impossible task. The thing that is wrong at the core of pedophilia is that you are having or attempting to have sex with somebody who is not old enough to make a valid judgment about that. You know, that essentially makes you preying on somebody.
Sure, it becomes statutory rape.
And clearly not okay. So even if a child is willing, Billy would probably have been willing. He seems to be crushed by the fact his dad won't sleep with him.
Right.
Again, more dark humor. The kind of humor that would put you in jail some places in the world. So he might be willing to go along with that, but only because he doesn't know any better. And
he's ill-informed, misinformed, or underinformed.
Yeah, he's too young to be able to make that decision. Now, if he's 10 years older, but of the same mindset, it's slightly less wrong, but it's still, again, objectively wrong. Now, if you were to remove him from that equation, I don't think there's a crime. It's still incredibly creepy because we as a culture do not want to think about that, and it leads to things that are fucking awful. Sure. Pedophilia is one of those things that it's among the world's greatest crimes.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
One of the most terrible things that exists, and therefore we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to put it in a film. We don't want to discuss it. We don't want to acknowledge its existence.
Sure.
So that's why when it comes up as a taboo of somebody, beating off to, barely legal is okay because it's barely legal. But illegal magazine would not be okay. And as a society, we would all look at that and say, oh, it's terrible, because we don't want to we just all want to be like, hey, we're on the same page about this pedophilia thing is bad. Yeah, everybody's cool with that. Let's all just shun it every time it comes up. It's the 2-minute hate. We just, pedophilia, wrong, awful. Great, thumbs up, glad we're all talking about the same thing, and move on.
I'm sorry, I realized that it may have come off like I was advocating some sort of child pornography. I'm totally not.
This is the reason we are not on public radio.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I'm talking about picking up like a fucking Sears catalog, flipping to the children's clothing section.
I guess it would be as wrong as beating off to the home appliances. You're not alone in raising that question. That is, upon repeat viewing, something the director, the writer is trying to point out. You have this scene next to a scene of his sister-in-law who's saying, oh, if only I'd been raped as a child.
Yeah.
She's evoking those ideas early on, too. The woman who lives in Jersey in a state of irony. And it's a great mechanism because she can get away with saying these loaded fucking artsy things and by proxy letting the movie say those. And we go, oh, well, she's the artsy chick. It's for laughs. But she raises some of those questions too. I love where that relationship with Philip Seymour Hoffman's character with Alan goes.
Yeah.
And, him making the calls and her looking for something twisted. But nothing in this movie really tops the final scene.
No, it's amazing.
The way that it ends there is, God, it's just this scene where it can't get any worse, and then it does, and then it does again. Puppy kisses, Michael. Puppy kisses. Let's talk about Kids.
Okay.
Kids was an NC-17 film as well that was later released unrated. And as we're scrolling through the credits here, John Davis, not that one. Don't get excited. I know you want to make a funny corn joke.
Damn.
Produced by Gus Van Sant, another name in here. And then this would be early appearances of a couple different actors we can talk about. But Larry Clark is one of the most enigmatic people that comes from this film. He's the director. He's probably 70-ish now.
Wow.
But this was his first film. I think he was 52 when he made this film.
Jesus Christ.
So when you see a film like this that's supposed to be, it's a raw portrayal of, life on the streets for these kids or just life for these kids.
It's almost documentary style, fly on the wall.
Sure.
It seems like a lot of the dialogue is ad-libbed, the gist of this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're trying to capture an idea in a scene.
And
the words aren't as important.
There's a lot of long scenes, and it just seems really honest and real. And made by somebody who's maybe in their late 20s.
Well, yeah, it's such a huge surprise to think 52-year-old Larry Clark makes this film, or somewhere around that age. I mean, really close. And it's his first film, too.
Yeah.
A film like Kids being your first film. Photography was his primary medium before he started working on film, and I want to say is still probably what he spends a vast majority of his artistic time doing. He did this collection called Tulsa. It was a book of, rampant, depraved partying, sex and drugs and kids. It's a lot of what's in Kids is these young adults doing all of this stuff, not really as an expose, but more as, when I think back to Tulsa, I think of the participant component of that, because that's kind of what that was known for. It's a pretty well-known book of photography. It's the kind of thing, I've never gone to art school, but I imagine you probably, if you do a lot of photography history or, it would come up in a study of that. It was known for him being a participant in it rather than just an observer. That was a key component to, making it feel more raw, making it as well known as it was because he was involved. It made everything seem more real. So I guess that makes it not much of a surprise that when he does a movie like Kids, he's attracted to that subject matter.
Sure.
And having been younger when he came out with Tulsa, I want to say that was in the 70s. That puts him close to the age of 20 or 30.
Yeah.
Than when this probably came out. And if he's calling back to that mentally in his 50s, it's clearly a fascination that he still has and something he could think back to. Harmony Korine wrote this, though, and it's oddly another name that's never come up on our show, but Harmony Korine was 22 when he wrote this, and it was one of his first real breakout films as a writer. Larry Clark, I think he met him skating, which is kind of weird. But Clark's a big subculture guy, and even in an older age, still interested in skating and, that entire scene, that kind of punk, 90s punk scene. I think he was probably there taking photos or whatever. So he meets Harmony Korine. Harmony says, I've been working on this kind of film idea. Larry Clark thinks it's great. And we get the 95 film Kids, which is an insight to a culture that I've never really seen before.
Yeah, it's weird because it's simultaneously almost disgracingly modern.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Sure.
Stuck in the 90s.
Yeah, right.
It's weird because it's based on this culture that we don't get a lot of in Chicago, and we don't get a lot of in the Midwest. It's the street youth. It's kids who are of mixed ethnic race that all still have the hard street lingo and you know the I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's a lot of slang, a lot of weird syntax usage.
Sure.
It's what a lot of people would associate with Ebonics and ghetto speak.
Well, I don't know that I'd say we don't have it in Chicago. There was a time where I was working on a lot of stuff down on Michigan Avenue, which is in the Loop. I know, being a Chicago resident yourself, a place you never frequent because it's for fucking tourists, right? But I happened to be down there for a little bit of time, and during the day you would see quite a bit of that. Really a lot of it, just in the types of crimes that were being committed there.
Sure.
And it's a lot of kids running around pickpocketing, stealing. Right. If you're around the public schools when school's in session here, obviously there's going to be kids at schools, but you see what I mean. That stuff definitely exists. I just think we're not exposed to it at all.
Well, I think maybe that's a testament to what the film is doing. Is it's showing this thing that does happen, and it happens right under adults' noses. And it's these kids who are living adult lives. Yeah. They're living hyper adult lives. Yeah. They're making decisions that at their age they probably have no right to be making.
Sure. Well, especially, when you see a bunch of kids doing drugs that are 10 or something.
Sure.
It's ridiculous.
There's a lot of stuff that puts you on edge, and none of which, for me personally, and I know this is the biggest swinger of the film, so I don't know if you want to get to it right away, but the whole spreading of the HIV virus.
Sure.
I think is one of the most upsetting things to consider from a youth perspective.
Oh, yeah.
I've always considered the idea of, spreading an STD knowingly or otherwise to be something that happens, in an older adult culture, I guess, because just like these kids, I never really hear about kids with HIV, kids with, serious.
Well, they're not talking about it.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
These are the ramifications we talked about in Welcome to the Dollhouse. This idea that kids are sexual at a young age, and if we plug our fingers in our ears and don't talk about it, then it's also talking in happiness about adolescence.
Right.
Adolescence is very carefree, and so these people are not responsible.
Well, some of them are, because some of them go to a clinic and actually get fucking tested.
Okay, no, you're right. Some of them are responsible. That is definitely far and away the most responsible thing that happens. And
that's also the moment where we really realize that it is, in fact, Rosario Dawson, and it is, in fact, Chloe Savini, because they were veiled in the group of teenage girls and didn't look like themselves.
Yeah, the scene of those girls sitting around and talking, I mean, it's an amazingly frank kind of scene. It says a lot about Clark's style, that, you don't need to think about his spin. Like you said, it's very fly on the wall. So there isn't, what are these characters doing and what is Clark trying to tell us that these characters are doing? Instead, it's, the camera's just there.
Yeah, and they're just living. I mean, that's in their
the room,
life.
You're just listening to what they're saying and gathering that from them. There's something amazing about what this movie says about the medium of film in general. As we're watching this, and everything is so completely new to us because we're not around kids like this, we see that it's depraved, but we're fascinated by it. The ability of film as a medium to take us, sort of do the walk in a mile of someone else's shoes, but through art you can do that without actually walking a mile in that person's shoes. You don't have to shadow somebody for a day to see what their life is like. You don't have to intern with somebody to see what they do. You can watch this in a movie in a group that, I mean, the great thing about this is the opposite of something like, when we did Happy Go Lucky, which was another kind of, I think at the time we called it human experience film, or another Mike Leigh film, Naked, kind of did the same sort of thing. You'll find a lot of these films popping up, especially in the last 5-10 years. I suppose even Gus Van Sant, his films kind of have a take on that. It's the same feeling, but they tend to surround some sort of events.
Yeah.
But the event's not really the purpose of the film, though. The purpose is to get to know those characters. And so in a movie like this, I would never follow these kids around for a day.
Sure.
Even when I was their age, I would never follow them around for a day.
Yeah.
It's a scary place to go where they do.
You mentioned that you wanted to take a shower.
Throughout the movie, you just I immediately washed my hands after.
They go through, and it's not all physically dirty. I mean, if you take a look at something like the party scene at the end.
Yeah.
When she walks into the party, as if it were fucking ground zero.
Yeah.
And there's just filth and sleeping people touching each other.
You just want to get away from that. You just need to cleanse yourself. The film gives you that feeling.
But on top of that, some of these people are just bad people.
Yeah, it's true.
And they just leave this film over your brain. Just Telly, I mean, is the exemplary character of a bad person.
Well, in the scene we were just talking about of all the girls chatting with each other, that's juxtaposed with the guys' conversation.
Sure.
And I mean, I really want to come on the show. It would be such an easy exercise to go, how are the women and the men both, terrible characters in this? But I really feel like if there's any kind of portrayal, any spin that's going on here, the women in that group, they talk in a similar way to the men, but they're the ones getting tested.
Well, they're saying the same thing.
When you look at what they're doing throughout the film, they are kind of the victims.
Yeah.
And that should put them in a better light. I don't know if they're more responsible, with the exception of those two girls.
Yeah. I think the real differentiation there is the women are the ones being taken advantage of.
Sure.
Not that they're not strong and not that they're not independent, because none of those girls in the room.
Well, but they're not being raped. I
Sure.
mean, not all of them.
Right. But they're still, I mean, again, looking back to Telly, he's taking these, he particularly hunts down virgins.
Yeah, right.
And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that.
No, Jason does it all the time. No problem there.
Except he lies to them with the sole purpose of, I mean, his I guess his actual motivation is to fuck a virgin pussy,
Right.
which is all well and good. But the reality of the situation is he's actually just hurting them, both physically and in the long term, but he's also intentionally setting them up for disappointment.
Sure, he's preying on them.
And that goes back to, I mean, it goes back to what we talked about in Happiness a little bit.
Mhm.
It's not illegal, but it's so wrong. And then you get the end cap of he's also shooting them full of a big wad of HIV.
Sure, and you start to wonder about what creates a person like that. How does
Sure.
that person exist? I mean, a great part of it, I guess, is the adolescence, is the lack of any kind of maturity or responsibility there. But when you hear the guys' conversation, and maybe why they seem like such monsters next to the girls, is literally everything they're saying is about impressing each other.
Right.
I mean, every single line. They say nothing without having something to prove every fucking time. And so these are conquests for him. He's going out and he's sleeping with these girls so he can brag to his friends
Right.
pretty obviously about that. It's also in that same earlier conversation where they're talking about how condoms don't work, which is just, it shows also how dangerous and ill-informed they are. It's one of those things, I mean, of all the horrifying things that have happened today, most notably us entertaining, challenging conversations about the nature of pedophilia on our show, the most horrifying thing to me is when I hear people say that condoms don't work.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Let me state very definitively, condoms absolutely work.
Yep. Condoms not only work to prevent pregnancy, but they also work to prevent STDs.
It's true.
That's just another thing that I want to also put on, just to feel like somewhere in my life I have said that in a public forum.
That's
and
good.
I can be part of that force. But yeah, you're right. When they talk about that, you're right. It's terrifying. It's sad, but you realize these kids are being raised by each other.
Sure.
And I'm not sitting here going, blame the parents.
Right.
Because
right.
I don't blame the parents. I blame the children.
Yeah.
Because
they're the ones to blame here.
I mean, they're grown up enough to know right from wrong. They're not.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
they're not walking into 7-Eleven stealing a 40 thinking this is okay because we can get away with it.
I guess that's true. I mean, who the fuck am I to say whose responsibility it is for, you know what I mean? I don't know if they're old enough to know or if they still need ironing out. You're impressionable when you're young. I have no idea what
between the
creates
ages of
this.
14 and 17. You have to know, even at that age, if you don't know right from wrong, you at least know who does. And that
Sure.
group of boys is not a group of people who I would particularly, even at 14, I wouldn't sit in that room and trust that they knew better.
I don't know, man. I did some scumbag things when I was that age. I mean, nothing nearly on the scale of how bad this was, but I don't think I really developed like a personal ethical code till I was in my 20s. If you don't have role models around to do stuff like that, it's just something you're not exposed to.
That's true.
It wasn't until I found people to kind of look up to or books to read or authors or whatever that I kind of went, oh, what do these people think about this variety of topics? And, you know, do I like that viewpoint? Or you form a worldview. If you ask these kids about their worldview,
well, you
none
get
of
their
them know what that
worldview.
is.
It's in the voiceover at the end of the film.
Yeah, right.
Their worldview is sometimes you fall asleep and dream about fucking, and then you wake up and you want to fuck. And if I don't fuck something, I'm sad.
Yeah, so I guess the answer to the question, who's responsible for that worldview, I don't actually know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either.
But
I'm
we can pretty
speculating.
clearly point at the problem there is the worldview.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just all that violent shit they're watching on TV.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the best alternative to Amelie and Martyrs is really just to do Martyrs twice.
Yeah.
If you skipped over the films or you listen to the show first before you whatever, if you haven't actually sat down to watch both of these films yet, bagcat.doublefeatureshow.com. It's amazing how well that works.
It does, and it works fast.
You
it's
and
fast
I
acting bad
watched
cat.
we watched these films. It was what, 3.5 hours of depravity and sadness and misery. And in the first 20 seconds of Bad Cat, we were 100% recovered. Bad Cat is the greatest thing on the internet, or it's certainly the greatest thing our fucking show's ever done.
Yeah.
It's on the website doublefeatureshow.com, badcat.doublefeatureshow.com. Our email address is doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. And we will be back next time for another show. So what do we do at the end of the year?
At the end of the year, we basically waste everybody's time for a week, including our own, where we come here to the studio.
We watch no films.
We watch no movies.
Which is terrible.
We do a live performance, so it sounds bad.
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
We read emails that we've gotten over the year, and we talk about the mistakes we've made over that.
Great.
Basically,
do
we
you think
come
the
here.
show will wind up on that mistakes we've made?
I don't know, but we come here with a full breadth of honesty and tell you what we've done wrong and what you've done right. And
don't listen next week. In fact, find yourself some more movies to see, and you know what? Take a week off. Maybe go through a Killapalooza. Do something fun.
I guess, despite that, we will not be. You should still watch more fucking film.
Bye.
Joyous, sunny
happiness and kids.
It's happiness and kids. It's our final homage to Lazy Sunday films.
No, I don't think that's it. What it is, this all operates under a terrible false pretense, a presumption you and I are making that any human being is hearing this recording.
Right.
Normally we might joke that no one listens to our show when in reality 3 to 5 people listen to our show.
Sure.
However, this time, if anybody decided they were going to watch Happiness and Kids for the show, they're so mad at us at this point.
Yeah.
It's just not happening.
It's some irritating shit.
So this is, if you've never heard Double Feature before, welcome one new fan. If this is, in fact, your first show, this is the kind of show where, we have an NC-17 double feature by complete accident today.
Yeah, that is what happened.
NC-17 to unrated double feature was not the intention. That's just the sort of thing you happen to find on double feature.
And on top of that, the other thing you're going to...
Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and I've made it all this way with Michael Kester. It's me
here
and
we
you
are.
and Bad Cat.
Yeah, it's a Bad Cat.
So when people get this show, I think they're still going to be surprised because I still don't think
that they expected us to make it.
Yeah,
all the way to the end of the year.
We'd do this episode in particular. I think.
No, that's probably
when
more
the title
serious.
finally downloads in iTunes or when they go on the website or whatever.
I don't
they're
think
going to look at this and say, "Really, this is really happening."
I don't think the title is what's going to phase them.
No, probably not.
That's the magic of the decision we made, is to intentionally choose a title that sounded like it was a really fun for reasons. We like them. They're interesting. They're Gus Van Sant. These are all different reasons that a director may end up on double feature. But Todd Solondz kind of lucked out. We liked the cut of his jib to pair up against Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Sure.
And we had actually a while back, both of us had independently watched Happiness. Almost as a joke to each other.
Yeah, it really was.
I had watched it and I just said, you should watch this movie Happiness. It's really fun.
So I got it and I watched it, and that was
and we were sad.
Yeah, yeah, we were. I called you back and I said, "What the fuck?" Which, by the way, that was during involuntary isolation in Normal, Illinois. So I was already kind of losing my mind a little bit, and you decided that it would be funny for you. Yeah, I see you're really enjoying yourself right now.
Well, I'm laughing because at the time it was a joke, but upon watching it for double feature, it turns out it's one of the best films ever fucking made.
Yeah.
I find on double feature is that somehow we will manage to spoil 2 NC-17 rated films.
Yeah, we will.
If that bothers you, you can skip that using our fantastic chapters menu.
People love the chapters feature. They love it. All right, so happy 4 years, and next time we'll have a wrap up. And we always like to spend the last couple weeks of the year celebrating the fact we made it to the end of the year, even though we're never quite there until the next one starts. So enough of that. We'll save that for the year ender. Let's start with Happiness. Happiness was a film that abandoned its NC-17 rating. And it's a new show favorite, I guess, as far as the director goes.
Yeah.
Look at this guy just showing up twice towards the end of the year.
Yeah, we did Todd Solondz earlier. We paired him with Russ Meyer when we did Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Sure, and that wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, and we kind of, both of these films, he snuck his way onto the show.
Yeah.
A lot of times we choose directors.
I know.
And it's
Isn't
hilarious.
That great how that happens.
It's so good.
The opening of this is my favorite Todd Solondz of all the Todd Solondz. The John Lovitz, first of all, John Lovitz. All right, so let's just state that. I'm not going to exhaustively go through his filmography here, but he did The Critic. And wasn't too long ago we were talking about Amazon Women on the Moon. Or even before that, I guess, during Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, our feelings about, Roger Ebert and critics.
Right.
Or our feelings about not having feelings about critics, I guess. So The Critic was a show that, was kind of funny for that. But he just has this initial part, and it's fucking great. The movie starts in the post-breakup line, which is an incredible place to enter. You don't go through the whole getting the characters pass, or even the I don't want to see you anymore, whatever she said. You start in an awkward place. You've just walked awkwardly into a conversation.
Sure.
Which is, really, Todd Solondz